Hello 3 Design Care members. Today we're going to take a look at building bezels in 3Shaper. So this is going to make it so you can do really nice custom, more organic shaped bezels as well as regular bezels, especially if you've had problems with the certain shapes of stone like emeralds not giving you nice clean edges on your bezels. This is a good solution for that as well. I want to give a shout out to Benny in Germany for the idea for this video, so thanks Benny. So let's get started. We're going to set this up first in CAD. So we'll go ahead and in the jeweler's bench, we'll create a ring size builder. So this is assuming we're putting the bezel on top of the ring. You don't have to do this, of course. We can define the top plane. That would be the amount of the stone is going to sit off of the finger. I'm going to set it to 4 millimeters. Let's get average amount for a nice tall bezel. And choose a finger size. We're going to set this up parametrically for the first part, so you can change this finger size later. So go ahead and validate that. And click on that ring size builder, highlight it blue, and we're going to add our stone. I'm going to use the emerald just as a nice example because that's the one that gives us problems with the regular bezel builder sometimes. You can do any shape you want, of course. But I'm just going to do an emerald. I'll leave it 5 by 5 for now. Go ahead and validate that. So we're going to actually sweep our bezel to start with before we take it into 3Shaper. So I need a cross section. I'm going to draw that in the front view, the OXZ, and sketch. And we'll just start with a rectangle. It's a regular 2-point rectangle. Highlight it, and then we will change the size to 2 by 3. Good average size to start with. And then I'm just going to manually drag it and place it right about here on the stone. I place the top right corner right at the corner of the table, like so. So I'll pan and zoom in on that, and we'll use a line to draw the corner of the seat. And just like that. It's sometimes hard to draw a straight line. If you click back on it, you can type in 90 degrees. Make sure it's straight up and down. And then for the seat angle, we'll just connect that dot and draw in the seat like so. I always leave a little extra room so the pavilion's not sitting directly on the seat. And then we will trim out the extra parts. So we'll trim out that top corner and the little bit of line hanging over the outside of the box. Just like that. We need to make sure we connect it back together into one solid section. So we'll use auto connect. And we should have a box like so. We're going to keep this shape simple. Don't try to design any fancy shapes in your bezel. We want just nice straight spline here that has points on the corners only. And that's so when we do bring it into Shaper, it doesn't have a lot of extra curves and edges that we're going to have to clean up or delete. So keep it nice and simple mesh. So go ahead and exit the sketch. And the trick we're going to use is just like extruding a stone, you can actually sweep a stone. We're going to use the sweeping wizard because that's going to give us control over the placement of my cross section here. So if you highlight the stone, click on the sweeping wizard, you can see that it's going to use that curve that was used to create the stone. Even though we didn't draw the curve, it's still in there. So we'll jump right into section, add a section to the list, and we'll go under given section, we'll choose that section that we drew. That'll place our section on the curve. Now we just need to manipulate it. You can use your hotspot to flip the screen over. We're sideways, so you can use the little white arrow here to rotate the correct direction. So that'll allow us to see what we're working on. First thing we're going to do is rotate. We need to rotate it that way so it's the correct way up and down. That would be -90 for an exact rotation. Then we're going to use the move tool and just slide it down right below where the girdle would be and then over just outside the curve so our stone doesn't cross into our metal. Maybe leave a little gap for shrinkage if needed. We'll put it right about there. That's it for our sweep. Go ahead and validate it and we have our swept bezel. You'll see that this is nice and clean, check the polygons real quick. Gives us a nice shape that we can then take into Shaper and modify. So before we go into Shaper, we can actually save this into our library so that next time we need another emerald stone and a bezel that we're going to do in 3Shaper, it'll already be set up. So we'll save a few minutes. That was about 5 minutes to set that up. So go ahead and we'll clean up the file a little bit. We're going to hide the spline and go ahead and convert our object before we save it out. So go ahead and highlight your bezel and click on modeling for 3Shaper. And we just want to import the shape. Leave the accuracy right in the middle. We don't want to modify the number of splits there. Go ahead and validate that. Now, before we add any edit surfaces, we need to do our symbol output now. Once I click this edit surface button, we lose that parametric link between the bezel and the stone. So we're going to just save it at this point. That way we can use it again for different stones and sizes. So go ahead and exit out of 3Shaper. Highlight your bezel and your stone and go to export. Okay. If we change the file type to symbols, we should be in our symbol folder. Remember, symbols have to go in this folder. And you can create a subfolder if you want. So I'm going to create a folder and call it Shaper Bezels. And then make sure I go inside that folder and give it a name. This one would be an emerald. And save. Okay. Go ahead and take your snapshot and make sure you check Keep History so that we can change this parametrically later. Validate that, and now we have our symbol in our library. To test that, we can't import the same symbol VTF into the VTF that we created it in. It would be a copy of itself, opened in itself. Computers don't like that. So we'll go to File, New. You can save this file if you need to use it again. I'm going to hit No. And then we'll go ahead and create a new file and open up our library. We need to reload the library, so hit the Update Symbols button. And we should see our Shaper Bezel folder with our emerald. It's parametric because it has the green title. So drag that into your scene, and you'll see that all that history that we just saved will be in the new part that we just imported. You want to switch to that part by double-clicking it. It'll warn you that your part changed. Hit OK. If you have Delete Empty Elements on, it'll get rid of that empty part that we just started with. So there's our stack with the stone, the original sweep. That sweep we don't need anymore. You can delete that. It's still part of the history of our model. So unless you need to go back and completely change the sweep, don't need it. So there's the model that's already been converted. Our finger size, our ring size builder is still there. So at this point, when you're going to actually create the final project with this bezel, you'll choose the finger size that you want to build to. Validate, recompute, see that our model is still parametric. We can also change our stone. So double click on the stone, and I'm going to do a 7x5 emerald instead of the default 5x5. Validate that, recompute, the sweep and the converted model updates. So like I said, at least we have this part saved as parametric. Next time I need one of these, I don't have to start completely from scratch. I can just go and modify the parametric symbol, and then we'll shape it from there. Highlight the, we just need to double click back into modeling. We haven't added an edit surface left yet, so you can just double click right into modeling. Takes us to our subtools. Click on Reach Modeling Tools to add that surface edit to our model. So at this point, we've lost the parametric capability of changing our stone and finger size, so keep that in mind. So now we just need to clean up the model, and then we'll be able to shape it and create whatever bezel shape we want. I'm going to hide the stone, and I'm also going to go back to my tree and hide the axes and planes just to kind of make it easier to see. And I don't need this ring size builder for now either, so we'll hide that. Okay, so I'm going to go to polyhedral mode, show the edges a little clearer, and under edge mode we can see that some of the edges are sharp because we started with a sharp pointed spline. Some of these edges we're going to want to make smooth. So that would be the inside and outside of the top of the bezel. If we do a edge loop, you can select all the way around the top of the bezel and just soften that edge. Go to soft mode, we can see those softened up. Do the same thing for the bottom inside and outside edge as well. Loop and soften. So you can see those should be yellow now. And we go to our soft mode, we see we have a now softened bezel. Now because this emerald shape has these corners, we probably want to keep those corners sharp. So go ahead and select the 2 angled edges here at each corner. So there should be 8 of them. And sharpen those by clicking the sharp button again. And we'll do the same thing on the underside of the model. Those 2, those 2, those, and those. So 2 on each corner. And sharpen those. That'll keep our nice emerald shaped bezel. Okay. You'll notice this model is pretty simple still, so the edges are sort of bulging on the outside, and that's because we've got a difference between sharp and smooth edges on the corners, things like that. We're going to take care of that by subdividing this model a little further as we go. Before we do that though, we want to go ahead and clean up some the rest of the model. We notice we have a split here on the side of our shank, or our bezel, excuse me. We have this profile here that was created because that's where our start point was on the curve. We actually want that there. We're going to leave that, but we'll put a matching one on the other side. To do that, I'm going to select one of these horizontal edges, do an edge ring, which will select all of the parallel edges around the shape, and do a split and pull. If your split and pull tool is not centered, just hit reset. Make sure we split it right down the middle and validate. And I'm going to do the same thing on both sides. So select an edge on this side, an edge on that side, edge ring, split and pull. It's still centered, so go ahead and validate. So that just splits it up a bit, gives us a little more control over the shapes we'll be able to create. Especially here at the bottom, we want to bend that to our finger size. And we'll do that in a second here. Go ahead and split it across the midpoint around the bezel as well. Just the outside. We're going to select this vertical edge right down the middle, do another edge ring, and one more split and pull. So that'll subdivide it into 2 parts. Gives us, again, a little more control over the shapes we can make. So the next thing would be to start matching this up to our finger size. So show your ring size builder if you have it hidden. And from a front view, we're going to go ahead and select this bottom set of edges and move it down towards the ring, just right above it. Okay. You might also decide you want a tapered bezel. This would be a good time to do that. Switch to your scale tool. We'll do a universal scale, so the white scale, to scale it down, kind of taper out the bezel towards the bottom. Okay. Next we want to match our finger shape, so it's not a flat bezel sitting on a round finger. So we're going to exit out of Shaper for a second. Go ahead and exit twice to go all the way back to 3Design. And we need a support object. I'm going to use my finger size builder. Highlight that, do an extrusion, and we're just going to extrude it out past the bezel on both sides. Validate that. And to get back to 3Shaper, you're going to, underneath your model, make sure you double click Edit Surface so that we can go back to where we were editing that mesh earlier. If you double click modeling, you may end up getting a new edit surface on top of there. So we want to keep it simple, just go back to the edit surface. So now we're right back where we were in Shaper. We're going to go to vertice mode, select this bottom row of points or vertices, and what we're going to do is project onto. So select project onto, and we're going to choose the support type. You can do planes, curves, or solids. I'm going to choose solid, open up the configuration, and then we can add our cylinder to the list. So that shape there. And the type of projection we're going to do is going to be drop on support. I'll show you the other 2 as well. If I do according to normal, we're going to go ahead and select the 2 points. We're going to go to 3Shaper, go to Edit, Support, Drop on Support. We're going to go to Support, Drop on Support. We're going to go to Edit, Support, Drop on Support. We're going to go to Edit, Support, Drop on Support. We're going to go to Edit, Support, Drop on Support. We're going to go to Edit, Support, Drop on Support. We're going to go to Edit, Support, Drop on Support. We're going to go to Edit, Support, Drop on Support. We're going to go to Edit, Support, Drop on Support. We're going to go to Edit, Support, Drop on Support. We're going to go to Edit, Support, Drop on Support. We're going to go to Edit, Support, Drop on Support. We're going to go to Edit, Support, Drop on Support. We're going to go to Edit, Support, Drop on Support. We're going to go to Edit, Support, Drop on It's okay, but it projects everything straight down, so a normal direction. We lose some of our taper. So undo that. Optimized, closer to what we want, but it kind of doesn't match the surface exactly. It just kind of optimizes the shape based on that curvature. Not what we want either. So I'm going to undo that. The one we want is drop onto. That's going to drop those points directly onto the surface. We know that that bottom section is exactly on that cylinder. So perfect. I'm going to go to my select tool so that I can hide my cylinder. And now we can modify the shape a little more. Pretty much we're done at this point. We have a simple bezel. If you just want a straight, simple bezel, you can leave it like that. We might want to clean up some of the edges first, though. You'll notice that it still kind of bulges. Don't really have straight outside parts, and that's because we don't have enough geometry constraining the top and bottom of the shape. So to fix that, we can add some more splits. So I'm going to go into box mode so we can see clearly which edges we're splitting. In an edge mode, this section here, if I grab this edge and do an edge ring, what I'm going to do is split it using the same split and pull. And I'm going to move my tool up towards the corner. We call this a constraint edge. By putting one on either side of the corner, we get a fillet look. We could have used the fillet tool, but that can get a little messy around corners. So be careful with the fillet tool. This gives me complete control of my mesh. I know I can split it where I want, giving me an extra edge there. So go ahead and split that. And we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. Select one of the edges, edge ring, split and pull. Okay, my tool is on the opposite side of the edge, so just do symmetrical position. That'll give me the same split on the opposite direction. Split that one as well. If we go back to this soft view, you can see that gives us a little bit of a better corner. You're going to want to do the same thing on the inside edges. So this inside surface here, select that edge, edge ring, split and pull. Okay, make sure your tool is on the right side of the split, validate, and we can see that's starting to clean that up. We get a nice flat edge object, but a nice fillet around the corners. So, and then we'll do the same thing on that inside edge. So this one here, edge ring, split and pull. It's in the wrong place. We'll just do symmetrical position, validate. Okay, so that's starting to clean up a bit. If I go to this edge and do an edge loop and a scale, I can kind of fix that. So it's straight up and down, like so. And like I said, that's pretty much it. Once you've got it all cleaned up, you got a nice straight, clean bezel with nice filleted corners. You could use it as is, or you can customize it. We can make some crazy shapes, do some cutouts. I'm going to add a little bit of a flair to it by adding a nice inset on the outside surface here. So before I do that, I'm going to just do a simple refine to give me more edges to work with. Be careful, once you refine it, it's refined. So if you need to modify the overall shape, really tough to do now because we have all these extra points and edges. So, but since I've got my base shape done, it's okay to do a refine. We're going to go do paint selection, and I'm going to select these, oops, make sure I'm in surface mode, and I'm going to paint in these 12 faces on the front, and we might as well do the back at the same time. Hold shift to add to that selection. If you get an extra piece selected by holding shift, you can hold control to remove it from the selection. So one more time, I'm going to do it again. Paint selection, just paint over the section, turn around, hold shift, paint in the second part of the section. Just like that. Okay, before I extrude those, I'm going to offset it a bit. That's the inset tool, not offset. Inset inside those shapes, and we can adjust how much inset. I'm going to do about 1/4 of a millimeter from the original edge. You want pocket mode if you want this to be one full inset. You can also do split instead of connected, and that'll inset each one. So that could give you a cool pattern if you wanted to cut those out instead. So for this one, I'm going to use the connected mode and validate, and you see it's going to subdivide that section with a nice inset around it. And then while it's still selected, we'll do an extrusion and just push that in a little bit to give us a nice little inset extrusion on both sides. Pretty simple for now. Next we could add our band right here in 3Shaper. The nice thing about that is it'll blend nicely into our bezel. We don't have to do any booleans, it'll all be one part. You can still go back and create your shank traditionally in CAD and then boolean it together. Completely fine as well. So to do it in Shaper, I will select the 4 squares there, the 4 here, and we're going to be bridging them together. So shaping bridge. By default, you should have something like that. It's bridging through the model. We don't want that. We want to use the curve. So the 4th mode, follow our finger size. That's going to bridge the 2 shapes going around the curve. So it's only 5 subdivisions by default. We may want to raise that number to about 15. I like to do a nice odd number. That gives me a edge right at the center in case at some point I want to split this ring in half. I have that edge already in the middle. So that should be plenty. 7 splits on either side plus the 15th right in the middle. And that'll match our finger size. So that'll give us our shank. We can modify our shank from here just using our normal shaper tools. You want to raise up the shoulders, just use the move tool on those points. A little bit of a scale, spread them out. Maybe these 3 points on either side. Make sure we do both sides at the same time to keep it symmetrical. Raise that up and then spread them out using scale X, like so. And so on. You can obviously reshape this shank into anything you want. So that's pretty much it. If we exit out, we have a nice solid bezel and shank all built together. We don't have to do any booleans, and we can do nice flowing shapes in Shaper. Oh, there's our stone. So we will see you next time in the members videos, and have a nice day.